All right, hello class. Today we're going to talk about how to write a warrant.
Yes, this is the third part in your claim evidence warrant series. So this is Ms. McCorkle, and we're excited to show you how you can make amazing warrants.
Yep, this is Mr. Crayer. Probably the best trilogy out there since Star Wars. So I'm excited you made it to the very end. This is just a quick little recap. I think we've had it in every single one up to this point, so it might be beating a dead horse. But let's just talk real fast about the support sandwich. You have your three parts: your claim, your evidence, and warrant. The claim is your argument.
And then you have evidence that you've selected that proves that argument. This could be personal experience, it could be a quote from a story that you've read, it could be facts, it could be some authority like Mr. Crayer talking about, how meaningful literature is.
Right.
And then that final piece that we're going to talk about today is your warrant. The warrant is the logical connection that you as a writer show between the evidence and the claim that you're making.
And hopefully while you're watching these videos, you're taking notes as well. And then I would just take down that definition of warrant because you can't write that down enough. All right? So what we have here are two setups to the beginning of two different arguments with kind of half of a support sandwich here. When most people are talking, they'll make it about this far without adding the final step, which is the warrant that connects it all back together.
So the bolded statements are actual claims, all right? So perhaps one claim that you could make is that students should not have to do homework. Sounds great to many students, but obviously a lot of teachers would say, hey, what evidence do you have to prove that?
Exactly, exactly.
Well, sadly, Mr. Crayer and I did find some evidence from a scholar named Alfie Cohn who argues that homework doesn't actually support learning and help learning. So that could be our evidence and claim structure there.
And that kind of goes back to that idea of the evidence being from an authority, because you could say something like students should not have to do homework. You're like, well, my older brother says we shouldn't have to because it didn't help him. You're like, well, maybe not your best piece of evidence.
You want it to be something that's persuasive, and you want to consider your audience when you're, making your claim and using that evidence. So.
Yeah, that little helpful academic scholar there kind of helps out. Now, the other side of that argument would be students should have to do homework. And then here, maybe some evidence that they would pull from is researchers from the Center of Public Education claim that certain types of homework, sorry, this might be cut off on your screen, have been proven to enhance student learning. That's right. Homework enhances your learning.
So here you can see that there are two kind of dueling claims and some dueling evidence. This happens in life all the time. Now we need a little bit of your voice to be added into either the claim and the evidence at the top or the claim and the evidence at the bottom. So we're going to kind of show you how you would explain how this one piece of evidence relates to one of these claims.
Yeah, exactly. And Ms. McCorkle said it very well. People have made this argument before. You're not the first one to make it. And all you're doing here is citing evidence from somebody else. So now you need to put your kind of spin on it, and that's what you're going to do with the warrants.
So warrants, really, when we talk about them, are like the place in your writing where your opinion comes out. This is the place where the writing becomes yours, okay? And there are an infinite number of warrants you could use. While there may be a limited number of quotes or pieces of evidence you could use to support something like, hey, students shouldn't have to do homework, warrants and the way that you explain them are really all about you. And the way that I explain a piece of evidence can never be exactly the same as the way like Mr. Crayer does or anybody else. So this is really a great place for you to include your own voice.
Exactly. And if you've been using dialectical journals, sometimes when you're writing your responses to the entries, that's your feelings and that's your analysis. That's what the warrant is. That's where a lot of your analysis is going to come out. Because the claim, might not be the most amazing or innovative, but your warrant is really where, you're going to dazzle whoever you're writing for.
You're going to show your thinking. All right, so we're going to show you, we're going to take that claim that students should have to do homework.
Your favorite, like that one. Yeah, your favorite one. I'm sure you agree with us too. You like it.
So now we're going to come up with some possible warrants. And remember, we told you before, there are lots of different ways that we could explain this. So one example that we could have for a possible warrant is, while perhaps not appropriate at the primary grades, reading and research skills for high school students are best completed independently. We really believe this. And it's an interesting way to kind of give additional information about your evidence and to link it directly to that claim.
And you can even see in this piece of evidence where it says research from blah, 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 that certain types of homework have been proven to enhance. That's a little vague. And so with your warrant, you can take that multiple ways. And so here you might want to make the conversation more about the difference between primary grades and high school grades. Another way you could take it is maybe to focus on not so much the homework, but how teachers need to interact with the homework. So you might make a warrant such as, the key to effective homework, research shows, is immediate feedback from teachers. Thus, these types of assignments should be emphasized.
And there you're still focusing on different types of homework, right? But here you're focusing on the type that, how teachers grade those types of homework rather than focusing on primary versus secondary assignments. And so obviously you can see this would take the paper in another direction, but it's still the same piece of evidence.
Yep. And then finally, just for another example, number 3, taking it a different route, this research supports the previous point that not all homework assignments are equal in effectiveness. Sorry, that's hard to read. But here what you can do is, we talked about the warrant linking the claim and the evidence together, but it's also maybe helpful to link it to a previous support sandwich that you've written. So obviously here we don't have that previous point, but it's nice to see that your warrants kind of stack on each other as well, that they're not just a support sandwich, but all of your ideas are related to one big idea.
The warrant really shows that papers are actual conversations between you and your community of readers. And so you really want to continue to communicate with those pieces of evidence and with the person reading your piece.
Great. And we could have done the same thing for why students should not have to do homework.
Yep.
But that would just be silly. So we hope you enjoyed that one more.
Okay, so to recap, today you've learned about warrants.
Yep.
And warrants are your analysis of that evidence and how it fits with a claim. So it should connect that evidence to your argument, which is your claim again.
And then make sure it's showing your opinion and what you need to add to the conversation. Otherwise, you're just parroting back what you might have heard or read from some other place.
The last thing I kind of want to remind you about, even though we oftentimes hear students say, oh, why do I have to explain my quote? It's just obvious. You saw with the 3 examples that we gave you of warrants, it's not obvious, right? Because that's a place where you get to show us how you're going to use that piece of evidence, and every student could use one piece of evidence differently. So it really isn't as obvious as you would think. So make sure you take the time to be creative and innovative and show us your voice and thoughts.
And I think this is an area a lot of students normally kind of struggle with too. So, the warrant can do a lot of things, but if you focus on what we've talked here, you're probably going to be much better off, and feel free to talk to your teacher as well. But hopefully that was a helpful video. There's a little form attached to the bottom of this video so you can practice making your own warrants. If your teacher told you to do that, then fill that part out. Otherwise, have a good day, night, evening, morning.
Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.
Later.